Guys, welcome back to Medical Coding with Blue. Today's episode is all about ICD-10-CM Z code study hacks. If you're brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue. I'm a medical coder. Okay, guys, since you guys seem to like these hack videos, I figured I would do one today about the Z codes. So when it comes to Z codes, I get the question a lot. Blue, how do we know when certain Z codes apply? How do we know when we are supposed to pick up the history of? How do we know which aftercare code to get? How do we know which one falls into where? I'm just so confused. So I will say this, guys. You don't know what you don't know. And the hack part about it is that you have to get familiar with your book. That is going to be the first hack. But in saying that, we would start off with the appendixes. Now, I will say this as a side note. I am not fancy schmancy when it comes to these videos. I don't edit my videos. I don't put up flashy graphics. So if that's you, that's what you like, that's what you want, you won't find that here, okay? But what you will find is an interactive experience. If you have the Optum ICD-10-CM Expert for Physicians 2023 edition, that's the book that I'm looking at today. So you can totally use that. You can follow along if you like. You can look at your own book if you have a different publisher, but just know that, of course, what I'm saying is not going to be the same as what you're seeing, okay? But here we go. So the first hack that I will start off with is for you to flip to Appendix D. Now, Appendix D starts on page 27 in the appendixes section in the back. And Appendix D is the Z codes only as principal/first listed diagnosis. So you don't know what you don't know. And the only way to know what is going on, because a lot of people are like, how do I know when to pick up any of these Z codes? The first step that you got to do is look up every single one of these codes that are listed here on this Appendix D list, and that is going to be 138 codes that you're going to be looking up in this chapter 21 section. Now, chapter 21 starts on page 1259. The thing that I love about Optum, and I know other publishers will do this too, but I love the way Optum sets theirs up. They will start the beginning of every chapter with that chapter specific guidelines. And what Optum has done is they give a scenario, they give the answers, and then they give the rationale. So as examples of all of these codes in action, I think that is wonderful. I love Optum for that. But the thing that I will point out to you is this. It starts out where it's saying the chapter specific guidelines with coding examples. It says use Z codes in any healthcare setting. So it doesn't matter what healthcare setting that you're in. This whole Z code section, these codes can apply anywhere, all right? But again, it's about the sequencing and knowing those sequencing. But if you look at that chapter, if you look at that Appendix D, you'll know that those Z codes are going to be specifically listed, first listed. So if you have an encounter that is, having anything that's related to any of those things that are listed there, then that's when you know that, okay, that's going to be my first listed diagnosis code. For example, if a patient is coming in for a pre-op, then you would know, okay, well, pre-op, then, okay, I've got to pick up that Z01818. I have seen coders do that where the provider says that the patient is there for a pre-op and they're going to have surgery on this. And the coder totally misses the Z code for the pre-op, and they just report the diagnosis code that they see that they're having the surgery for. And guess what happens? These are how claims get denied because of incorrect coding. Now, sometimes it's the provider that is selecting the diagnosis codes, and so the coder is just charged with basically verifying to make sure or correcting as needed any of the codes if there's something that could be more specified. I will say this, doctors and providers are not meant to be coders. That is why we have a job, okay? So we need to show why we are valuable, and that is to be able to pick up that detail. Because again, they don't know, and they're not aware of, okay, these are all the things that we look at as coders. And for those that use computer-assisted coding in their electronic medical record, you know that computer-assisted coding is not always correct either. I have seen computer-assisted coding try to highlight fall. The example that I had was fall, where the doctor was talking about the time of year, not the accident, but the computer-assisted software is saying that there's an accident here. So that's the thing that you have to realize, that it's just because it's there, it's meant as a tool. We as coders still have critical thinking, and that is one thing that artificial intelligence will not beat us on, is that critical thinking. But again, you don't know what you don't know unless you educate yourself. And these hacks that I'm talking about are the hacks that I wish somebody would have told me, that so that I didn't have to figure this stuff out, but I figured this stuff out. So now I'm sharing it with all of you. Okay. So start with Appendix D, look up all of those codes. It's 138 of those. And before you start hemming and hawing, it's going to make you more proficient if you get it in your head, these ideas of what they want as first listed diagnosis. Okay. So I also recommend, this is the second hack, is to go through all of the coding examples at the beginning of the chapter, right? Go through all of the chapter, the examples at the beginning, work them out. And if you say, well, the answers are right there, Blue, cover them up. Or have somebody in your household cover them up. Put a little sticky note on there and cover it up. And then when you get to working through it, you can take off those stickies and you can look at the answers, all right? But it's just that simple, guys. It's the actual going through the process of looking at it, all right? So that's hack number 2, is working through all of those really awesome scenarios where you're going to see those codes in action. So if you cover up the answers and you look up according to the scenario, it's going to get you more familiar. There's no reason that coders shouldn't be doing this, either veteran coders or students. There is no reason that you can't pick up a book and do that. Even if you have a year-old book or whatever, and you're working in maybe a 2022 book and you're practicing with that, that's fine. You know, coding guidelines do get updated, but at the same time, it's still giving you practice. If you're saying, well, I can't afford the $24 it is for the 2023 edition from Optum, okay, with the free shipping. I'm just saying, is it $24, $25, $26, something like that? It's less than $30. But yeah, it's that much, $23. I mean, $26, something like that, for the 2023 editions. I'm just saying, it's a really good deal. But if you cover those up and you work through those, that's going to give you a lot more to understand, right? So then you have chapter 21, where it starts all of the codes, and that's on page 1264. That's what I'm looking at right now. I will say this also. Pay attention to the notes. Pay attention to, pertains to the code ranges of this. So I'll show you that here in a minute. But if you're looking at the beginning, it says persons encountering health services for examinations Z00 to Z13. And it says, note, non-specific abnormal findings disclosed at the time of these examinations are classified to categories R70 to R94. So again, that's something that if the documentation is saying this, then that's when you know, when you're picking up any of these encounter for general adult medical examinations. If you know if you have any of these, then if you have something that's within that code range, then you have to make sure that you are saying, okay, got to make sure that this is here. If it's here, then I got to make sure that I got to pick it up, because that is pertinent to those in that code range as well. Then you also have to understand the excludes 1 and excludes 2. Excludes 1 means if you see that and that patient has that condition in that excludes 1, you know you cannot pick up what's in that code range or whatever's under there or whatever's next to it. You cannot pick that up where it says excludes 1, because that means that is already included in what is in excludes 1. If it says excludes 2, Excludes 2 says the patient may have that condition that you're looking at plus the condition that's in the excludes 2. So it is okay to pick them both up. But excludes 1 means that you cannot pick both this code and that code. It's got to be one or the other. And basically, if they have that excludes 1, then you're going to go with that excludes 1. All right. But and I know it gets a little confusing, so I'm going to say it again. If it has excludes 1, it means you cannot code that here. All right. That means it's got to be one or the other, and it's going to be that one that's going to be in that excludes 1, because they're saying that excludes whatever there is already included in that. Excludes 2 means they can have both of those conditions, but like watch out, because they could have both of those, or they could have one or the other. So it really all depends on what is happening. All right. But I will show y'all, I'll talk about an example here of that in a minute. Pay attention to where it says use additional code to identify. So if we look at Z01.021, and that is on page 1265, if we look at that, it says right there, use additional code to identify abnormal findings. So remember all the way at the beginning where it says non-specific abnormal findings disclosed at the time of these examinations are classified to categories R70 to R94. So that's why it's saying, hey, if there's anything abnormal here, think about this. We've got to be able to pick that up. And it says use additional. So whenever it says use additional, then that means that code we're looking at, the use additional is going to go next after it. Okay. So that's what you got to pay attention to, guys. Pay attention to the sequencing wording. Okay. Use additional. So that code's going to go first. Doesn't say first listed, but it means that if there's something else, then you need to add that on. Okay. And then there's a lot of that use additional code. They have tips here as well. So it says, if we look also on page 1265, if we look at Z01.81, and it says encounter for pre-procedural examinations, right? It has a little check mark and a box, meaning that it says a check mark in a box and it says 6. So that means that is an incomplete code, that it needs 6 digits. So if we look a little bit lower, we'll see where it starts, right? Z01.810, encounter for pre-procedural cardiovascular examination. Z01.811, encounter for pre-procedural respiratory examination. Z01.812, which is encounter for pre-procedural laboratory examination. And then it says Z01.818, which is encounter for pre-procedural examination. And then it'll give you like what it's kind of referring to. It'll say encounter for pre-procedural examination not otherwise specified, and then encounter for examinations prior to anti-neoplastic chemotherapy. So that's what that particular one is referring to. But the tip, it says assign a code for the condition necessitating the surgery and any findings as an additional diagnosis. So that's where it's telling you this code is listed first. Then you got to follow it up with whatever they're having the surgery for. All right. And another thing that I see coders doing wrong is that whenever they're doing a pre-op for an injury, let's just say they have a torn meniscus, and they say, oh, it's a left torn meniscus. All right, cool. So we do the Z01.818, and then they want to do the knee torn meniscus with a D at the end. The D is for when they're in the healing phase. If they are about to have surgery, they are not in the healing phase. This is active phase. This is when we are not healed yet. We are still trying to get to that point where we are going to be healing, but we are being actively treated at this point. This is active treatment time. So it's either active treatment or initial treatment. We are in the active treatment because when we are in a pre-op, we are not in the healing phase yet. That will occur after the surgery. So whenever we have surgery on an injury, that injury code is going to be carried through in that aftercare part. There is not going to be a Z code in that aftercare if they're having a surgery for an injury. That injury code has got to be that S code that starts with the S and then ends with a D. So that's going to be in that post-op care. Now, hopefully you can get on board, get your providers on board with picking up those external causes. Now, a lot of people will say, well, no, my provider gets mad and they get this. Guys, this is important. It is important for statistical reasons that providers get educated, because I think that's what a lot of it is that they are not educated, because all it sounds like to them that you're telling them is you need to do more work. You need to do more work. When in actuality, that's not the case. It takes 2 seconds to type out, well, this was due to a fall. It doesn't have to be a big opus. All it has to be is just to the point. They fell. They were in a car accident. They were this. They were that. They were jumping on trampoline. Whatever the case may be, it's that external cause that gets picked up in the post-op time too. Any subsequent encounter, it's okay to have that external cause. Now that's just the external cause. That's not like place of occurrence. Place of occurrence, activity, all that stuff. That's only for the first time that they're being seen for that particular injury. The rest of the time, it is your injury code and an external cause code. And that external cause code is going to be 7 characters, and it's going to start with a W or an X or, one of those. And then it's going to end with an A, the D, or the S. Now, in that subsequent time, that is going to be, what you would pick up, with that injury code. Now, it is a little bit of an uphill battle because they are going to be resistant in the beginning. But it is about your approach as a coder too. It's about your approach, and it's about how you handle it. And if they say, well, I don't want to have to do that, then kindly point out that these patients' records are seen by other doctors. They're seen by attorneys. They're seen by judges and things like that if a case goes to court, right? And with this, you want them to have the most complete, the most detailed, concise documentation of why this patient was injured and what happened. Because we don't know why the patient was injured unless they document it. Now, this injury could be due to a car accident. It could be a workman's comp claim. It could be just that they just had an accident. It could be anything. The patient could be potentially going through an abusive situation as well. And so that's the thing that we need this statistical data, because not only is it good for programs and things like that to have this information, but it is also beneficial for the patient because there is a record. There is a solid, concise, detailed record of what is happening to them. Because injuries can have long-term effects. I don't have to say this, guys. Injuries can have long-term effects. And why it happened needs to be documented. This cannot be stressed enough. It needs to be documented. And there's a lot of people who say, well, they don't care about that. They don't care. They should care. And you should speak up to help them to care. Because if they don't realize why it's important, then they're never going to do it. But you can do that gentle coaching. You can do that gentle push to say, okay, we're going to do this. Because that's what I did with my providers. Did they fight me? Did they argue with me? Oh, yes, they did. This is stupid. Rah, rah, rah. I've had people yell and scream and go on and do all kinds of crazy things and say crazy things. But I stood there and I took it. Because you know what? It's not about me. It's not about that provider. It's about that patient. It's about that patient and the importance of having that information in their record. And I will stand up for them because that's what I'm supposed to do too. I'm supposed to stand up as a coder for anything that is relevant to that patient that has to be documented. Okay? Now, I don't want to get off on all these other things, but I want to make that clear. And I guess I'll have to do a hacks video about injuries. But think about that, guys. It's all about the statistics and making sure that you select these very detailed codes as it's necessary is going to be a great thing for you guys. That's what's going to elevate you from being just a basic coder to an exceptional coder, because that's the goal, is to be an exceptional coder. I'm just saying. So again, if we go through and we look at all of these things right here, right? Look at page 1269. We see the first one right here where it says Z16, resistance to antimicrobial drugs, right? So it says code first, the infection. So when we look at that series, we see Z16.1, and then we see that it has a little check mark in 5. Z16.10, it says resistance to unspecified beta-lactam antibiotics, but it says code first, the infection. So that's why we need to look, whenever we're looking up these codes, we need to look back here in the tabular section, because that's what's going to tell us all these other things that the index doesn't tell us, right? So pay close attention to those. But like I said, hack number 3 is going through and looking through the chapter. And yes, it's quite a bit of pages, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Not anything that you can't just sit there and look through. And again, you don't have to read everything, but looking through it on a consistent basis is what is going to help you, again, to be a better medical coder. The other thing is this: if you have time to sit here and scroll through Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, all this other stuff, you have time to do this. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever you got. You can spend it to look through this, because then you're going to say, oh, well, I see that there's genetic carrier codes here. And then where it says on page 1269, where it says genetic susceptibility to malignant neoplasm, code first, if applicable, any current malignant neoplasm, and then it gives you the code range C00 to C75, C81 to C96. Use an additional code. See, code first, and then it says use an additional. Use an additional code if applicable for any personal history of malignant neoplasm. And then it gives you Z85 point, and then it gives you a little dash. That little dash means that whatever the other code is to complete that code. So Z85 is where you got to start, because that's a personal history. So that's when you can flip back to that section back there, and you can see Z85, okay, all the options that are there. It's easier when you start to follow it, okay? That's all I'm saying. It's easier when you start to follow it. But I'm almost out of time. Why do I run out of time? Okay. So I'm going to tell you guys something. Here's a hack for you. Hack number 4. All right, hack number 4. So where is it? I know I saw it. Come on. Okay. So jump to page 1290. This is going to be the last part of it, because I'm almost out of time. Jump to page 1290. If you look at Z87.3, Z87.3, personal history of musculoskeletal and connective tissue. Conditions classifiable to M00 to M99. This means that all of those codes, M00 to M99, they all fall under personal history of diseases of the musculoskeletal and connective tissue. That's a starting range. That's Z87.31, right? Z87.3. And then when you look at it, okay, well, here's the options. Z87.31, personal history of healed non-traumatic fracture, right? And there's that little check mark box with the 6 in it, and it says, so that, that's partial code, right? So Z87.310 is personal history of healed osteoporosis fracture. That's that non-traumatic, right? So that's when you would pick that up, and it says tip, assign for history of osteoporosis fractures that have resolved, even when a code from the category M80 indicating current osteoporosis fracture is also reported. So if if they've had a history of one fracture that's already healed, but maybe they have another fracture that's currently going on and there's that M code again, that's what they're talking about right there, okay? So then they have where those other ones are listed. Then they also have the genitourinary system conditions classifiable to N00 to N99. That's beginning at Z87.4, and then it breaks down each one of those there. So if you are looking, that's the 5th hack. So the first hack is to look at the Appendix D. Second hack is to work through the beginning part of the chapter with those things, with those, those examples. Hack number 3 is to look through the entire chapter. Hack number 4, then you're going to be looking at those code ranges to make sure that you verify and you look at, okay, well, this is pertinent to this, so I know I'm on the right track. Or if it says to code first or use additional code, that's when you know, okay? And then that 5th hack is, excludes 1, excludes 2 is also in there. I think that was hack number 3 or hack number 4. Anyway, there was 5 hacks. You can always look back on this video anyway to look it up. But make sure that you are looking at those things. Make sure that you look up those codes and make sure you familiarize yourself with the Z code section. That way it's not so intimidating. You're not so lost, guys. That's the thing. If you feel like you're in the weeds, you have to get even more in the weeds by stopping what you're doing and trying it this way. Try to look up those codes. Try to start off in the beginning of the chapter and look at those codes, look them up, and then look at all of the notes and the tips and everything else. So that way you'll be even more proficient on this chapter. And you can do that for any chapter. I'm just saying. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. I hope this video was helpful for you. I know I got off on other things, but that's the way coding is, guys. And you got to keep up. I'm just saying. So if this video helped you, please like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see y'all next time. Bye.